Hey guys, so welcome to my channel where we discuss spirituality and anything else that comes up that I decide I want to talk about. This is a new endeavor. I definitely have been wanting to do this for some time. I've been in this place where I'm like, where do I start? What can I do? Where do I begin? So it kind of dawned on me. I've been watching a lot of videos within the spiritual community and also videos within demonology and how some demon spirits. I feel so weird saying it out loud. Like these are thoughts I've had in my head for a long time, but to say it out loud and make my own video, it feels very peculiar. So in some sense, yes, I've been working with some demonic spirits, and a couple of them have kind of introduced into my life, like just their energies. I feel like I haven't quite made like contact essentially yet, which is something I definitely want to do. But I definitely wanted to talk today about Belial and how he helped transition a big point in my life and where I'm at now. Um, so to begin very easily, I was working at a shop, manufacturing, I guess you can say, and it was a spiritually inclined business. So these products could essentially help people in their ritual. Um, there was time in that space that really helped me, and it was very love and light. How do I even say this? Inclined, shall we say. Um, and it served its purpose for the time. I remember prior to this, I was working for the state, and I just started to see how broken the system was, and I just wanted to push myself into a new business to be able to kind of align what my beliefs were with what the work I wanted to do, and that was this. And so it was amazing. It served its purpose. I've learned so much about others and myself, but there was a point where it was time to close that cycle and to leave. I feel like a lot of times within the love and light community, people negate what the shadow is, and you can't run from your shadow. Your shadow is inevitably part of yourself, and I feel like throughout that experience, I was running from my shadow the entire time until I faced it, and I was able to grow through that time. So essentially, at this job, I grew from a entry level to becoming more of a pivotal part of the business, in the sense of they really depended on me. They trusted me. I did really hard work, and it just at some point dawned on me that I was no longer happy. My beliefs no longer aligned, and I needed to leave. Um, so I'm going to back up for just a moment. And part of the reason why I was able to break out of this love and light cycle that goes inevitably nowhere, I was introduced to the energy of Hekate. So I've heard of there being several spirits who tend to come together in a sense, and Hekate and Belial are some that I've heard some videos in that sense. So being that I was so like I wanted to be part of the love and light, and I negated negativity. I had no idea who Hekate was, and being a spiritually inclined company, we had things that associated to deities, and so she was one of the deities we made something for, essentially. And there was a point where I had a shift, and my coworker, she was out for the day, so they had to pull me from my space to put me in her space to accommodate the needs of the business. So I was there, on the computer, just doing my thing, typing away, and above the computer there are stacks of cards with said deities that we do these things with, and next to it, I guess there was like a couple aside, but I'm typing, and out of nowhere something falls, and it falls and right inside of the keyboard where because like it was one of the keyboards where the keys are about like that thick. a card fell and it landed in my keyboard and it just sat there, and it was Hekate's card. It was literally like while I'm on the computer, it just boom. And I just looked at it and I pondered it. And I definitely like to not take everything as a sign, because that I can feel like is very dangerous thinking. So I then pondered it for some time, and I had no idea who this energy was, Hekate. And so I began to get curious, and I kind of started looking into her, and it seemed very much of like a vibratory match for myself at the time. And I began kind of like looking into her and stuff. And then while I kind of started building this almost like relationship with this deity without necessarily working with her, just like almost admiring the energy in some regard, I then realized she was a dark goddess. It was when I realized that she was a dark goddess that it really put me into the space of like, whoa, is that okay? Like, I don't know how I feel about this, because if you remember, I was negating anything and everything that had to do with the shadow negativity in general. So it almost like disrupted something within me, because I definitely was like, okay, I don't know how I feel about this. And I kind of pondered it some more time, and I'm like, no, like, this is okay. And so that's when I started to really dive into the shadow realms and like really start to um allow myself to see the shadows of things and see things as they are. And I feel like it's almost like a dance with a pendulum, where you take the pendulum to one side, at least in my own life. This is how it's always felt. You take it to one side, it doesn't work out. So then you start going to the other side, and then you start to see it doesn't work out. But somewhere in that middle, that neutrality, that's my sweet spot. That's what I have found works for me. So during that time, and there's some more experiences that are quite peculiar. Um, and I think I'm going to speak on it in this video, because it kind of all ties in together. So there was somebody in my life who I cherished and loved quite dearly, and but I was also within my own shit. So like I didn't see how like my own depression could also affect other people, and so I didn't necessarily see at the time that my depression had impact. Sorry, my neighbor, that scared me. So I didn't necessarily see how my depression had impacted the friendship, and we no longer as close as what I had initially thought we were. So the signs were there, but it just didn't dawn on me until the shoe dropped. Um, so going through this process of, getting in touch with Hekate, I brought this to this person's attention. And at the time we were working together, I had brought her into, well, I don't like saying it like that. I referred her to this business because we were needing a hire and she needed a job. And so I went to my boss and we hired her. They hired her because it seemed like it would work out. Well, during this time, like we just started not being as close anymore. I was going through my own stuff, and I hermited like crazy, and I just was in my own head dealing with my own shit and wasn't able to really be there for people. And I think that really impacted our friendship now that I look back. And so I think that me dabbling into this shadow, into this darker space, may have made this person uncomfortable, and I didn't see it. I was just kind of going through my own things at the time. And so there came a point where this person essentially misconstrued a situation at work and thought that I and one of the bosses were gossiping, essentially. And so she kind of came at my boss in a way that said like it's her or me. And thankfully, right before it happened, I was able to talk to my boss, and they kind of like saw my situation, like how everything was happening, heard her how everything was happening, and it just didn't align. And she ended up putting her 2 weeks notice in because they didn't agree with um, her perspective of it. And I wasn't gossiping, that I really was there to do my job essentially. Um, and so she tried putting her 2 weeks notice in. They ended up saying, no, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to let you go now. Like, we can't have this kind of stuff going on, especially because like it was a higher vibratory like setting, and yeah, I don't even get into that. So she inevitably got let go, and this was just like the ride of me getting into this more uh, shadow side of work, and like I feel like that was a catalyst as to that happening to me, and I was unprepared. I was distraught losing a friend. I don't even want to cry right now, but I was really distraught. I really cherished this person, and I didn't see that we were on the same page, but that's okay. Things happen. Um, but as I continued on this job, it again, it did its purpose. And then I began to see how much I was doing for this business. And um, I asked for a raise, and my boss didn't agree. And I just kind of didn't like how she tried to frame it. But yet this person was going on extravagant vacations that were outside of business, and like our employees, we had so few, and we were making so much business that I just didn't understand why I couldn't get, not if not a raise now, I needed to have some projection as to like where this was going, how much, like, will I be getting a raise, like what's our goals, do we align essentially. And I couldn't get answers, and I couldn't do it any longer. And then being on TikTok, I was, scrolling through my stuff, and this one gal who's a tarot reader was on a live, and she was doing a ritual for Belial. Well, I was listening, and she was kind of prefacing, talking about him and how uh, what this ritual may improve in, and basically you wanted to just donate a little money, and she would do this ritual online. And yeah, it felt like it was the right moment for me to do this. I know Belial helps with like money and with work, and at that time, that's the only knowledge I really had, and she explained it in that way. And so I was with them in that live. I donated my money, and I became part of this ritual through that. And it was very peculiar how it happened, and it happened fucking quick. I don't exact, I know it was less than a month. I don't remember the exact time from when the ritual happened and when I left the job. But when I left that job, honey, it happened like nobody's business. And he also revealed to me how their motives and my motives were not aligned, and it was essentially my time to exit stage left. So I this really taught me how to, think and feel one thing, but also to play the game with people, accept their reality, and be willing to say, this is not for me. I will step away respectfully. I will not react. Be well. Like, that's a set. He really helped me to emotionally, because like I was such an emotionally charged person, in the sense that like once I'm, like, get my heart in something, it's so easy for me to be hurt if things don't work out. And he was able to help me distance myself from that hurt, and to see the situation for what it is without taking it so personally. That was the biggest thing, to not take things so personally. So what essentially happened is I I had asked for that raise. They did not meet me with the same energy, and I accepted that. That's okay. At the end of the day, it's not my business. I can't say what to do. So there was a moment where my boundaries were being a little pushed, and again, I understand it's their business, but at the same time, I should be respected as an employee. So, but though I was manufacturing these things, and I was in charge of setting the schedule and also preparing the items needed for the day. Well, I get in at a certain time, I chill for a second, get, tuned into my day, and then I get to going on that thing. So it was within that point where I was getting ready to get those things I needed set up. And I get this message from my boss saying, "Hey, I'm gonna need this space that you set up things for like 4 hours, and I'm gonna need it in the next like 20 minutes." So like she knew she was gonna be doing this, but she's just like was like, "Oh, I'm doing this right now," and I kind of got upset because, like, I have this space during this time because I need to set up for our day, because I otherwise, like, I don't have things to be doing. We're not making anything that day. I need the space. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I had to stop what I was doing to go and take care of that because she needed it for 4 hours. Even though she knew she needed this time prior to this, she decided to text me within 20 minutes of that happening. And I didn't appreciate that. So I kind of put up a boundary very respectfully. And I said, hey, I can go ahead and do that. I will go ahead and take care of what I need to take care of right now. However, I need at least more time for this planning. That way I don't feel like I'm bombarded with, like, oh, you need to do this now. I don't like that. I like to plan. I like to get ahead of things. So I kind of said that very respectfully, responding to her message. And within a couple minutes, she was downstairs at my door saying, hey, can I talk to you in my office for a second? We talked to the office, and she essentially told me we don't talk to each other like that. And I got a little upset. We're kind of going back and forth, not necessarily fighting, but I could feel my anger rising and, like, just not being listened to. And that's like my biggest trigger. If you're not hearing me, you're not listening to me, even if we're wrong, like, acknowledge, like, just acknowledge and understand and get to like a mutual space, and it wasn't happening. I had to leave. I had to go tell my other boss, hey, I'm gonna go take a walk. Like, I am very upset right now. So I ended up going and taking a small walk, and it was just like, it was a moment where I was proud of myself for putting my boundary up, because it's like, no, that's not okay. Like, you need to respect me as an employee and in my time. And like, the other part of me, who's such a people pleaser, like, was not okay with this interaction and wanted nothing to do with it. And sometimes, like, I would just fold and be whoever somebody needed me to be to make things work. I don't know. I don't like it, and I'm not that person anymore, and I'm thankful. And so, my boss was like, oh, we'll talk about it. My other boss, not the one that I got really upset with, the other lady, she said, we'll talk about it tomorrow. And I was like, okay, amazing. Eventually the conversation came, but we were all supposed to have it, all three of us, the one who I had the conversation with, me, and then the one who said, oh, we'll talk about it. So essentially things just didn't work out. And I decided, and that we didn't have this talk, right? I decided to go and start looking for a job. I'm looking. I find something almost immediately. I get a hold of them. They're like, yeah, can you do a phone interview tomorrow? I'm like, absolutely. And then the conversation never came. Well, I should say, with all three of us. The conversation came to me with the other lady, and essentially the message that I had gotten is, this is her business. She's going to do what she wants. And that's when I said, all right, got it, boss. And then I did my phone interview, and they said, perfect, you're great. I would like to do an in-person interview tomorrow. And I was like, absolutely, let's do this. I was going to lie to my boss and say, hey, I need to go drop off something to my child at school. I'm going to need to take a longer lunch. And that was the plan. However, this is when the day we had the conversation where she said that it's her business and she's going to do what she wants. And that was the overlying message. So then I kind of broke down and I was like, in actuality, I'm going on an interview. And I hadn't told her yet about going to my child's school. I was like, hey, I'm going to go to an interview. And yeah, so she's like, okay. And then that happened. I get a call the next day or an email the next day or that day saying I got the job. And so I was in this place of this weird space of like, okay, like, are they going to address this again? Are they going to talk to me? Or is things going to get better here? And I was just like, I don't know. So then, I decide that, sorry, I'm like, I'm losing my train of thought. Give me a second. So after them learning that I had the interview, she basically said, hey, don't take the job. And that's really all she said. Like, give us a chance. Don't take the job. So the incident happened Wednesday, phone interview Thursday, Friday it came. And I was like, okay, are we going to have this conversation with all three of us? Is this even going to be a thing? Because they never said that they weren't going to have the conversation. I just took it as, oh, we had the conversation because of the topic that me and that lady had about, oh, it's her company, it's her rules. And so I was like, in my mind, like, oh, they're not going to talk to me. This is not going to be addressed, you know? And then they're learning that I'm leaving, that I may be leaving. I hadn't told them I wanted to yet. So then that Friday came and a very peculiar thing happened. And this is when I really feel like I felt Belial throughout this. And like, it really solidified that this is the working of Belial. So I go off to lunch, right? Very busy day. There's some type of events happening in the city, like in the area. And so there's a lot of people. Well, I hear these two little ladies, so cute. They're talking to these people while I'm passing by, and she's talking about how she's lost and she can't find her car. And I was like, oh my God, like immediately I felt the need to want to help, but she's talking to somebody's trying to help her. Cool. Go off to my lunch, walking around. It's a 30-minute lunch. And then I'm like 10 minutes away from my lunch being over. And I see the little old ladies and they're walking around and they're alone. And so me being my nosy self, my helpful self, I decide to ask them, hey, like, is everything okay? Like, are you, and I had mentioned, I heard them earlier, like, are you still lost? And she's like, oh my God, yes. Like, I can't find my car. So I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? And, so then I was like, you know what, screw it. Let me go get my car. So, cause I was like, these little old grannies in this heat. No, I can't have it. I can't deal with it. Went and got my car, start driving around. I'm asking her all the questions. Do you remember how you got here? Do you remember the signs? Do you remember any buildings? Do you remember where you parked? Like, what do you remember that was around you? She could not remember a darn thing, that poor lady. I felt so bad. So I was like, okay, screw it. I'm going to do, cause where I'm at was kind of like a loop. It's downtown. So if I went one way, essentially it would take me throughout all the parking areas and she could hopefully recognize something. So I'm going, nothing. And I can't help her. I'm like, okay, I don't know where else to go. I'm going to have to drop you off somewhere. I have to get back to work. I'm probably going to be late. And I'm sitting there at that light after I had just said this to this old lady. And then she's like, oh no, I hope I don't make you late. I didn't necessarily say that. She said that. I hope I don't make you late. And then as that was happening, this little wasp, tiny little wasp, came to my window at an intersection that I was taking a left in. And he just came to my window and he nearly like kissed it. And then the little lady's like, oh my God, look. And I had already noticed this was wasp. And she had just said, I don't want you to be late. And during this moment, I was like, you know what? It's okay. I can be late. I'm going to quit. And in that moment was when I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm accepting this job. They have not talked to me about this incident. It's not going to get better. I'm not going to get a raise. They have no foresight on my job opportunity in this space. Like, what's coming for me? I'm done. And so, I dropped off these little old ladies to this area where I saw a police car. That way that guy can help her, and cool, I'm off to work. So I was like a few minutes late, whatever. And, I'm like, all right, I'm going to type up my letter to leave. And I did, but I was like, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait till the end of this Friday. And I'm going to see if they address this, if they address the incident that happened where we got all heated and upset, right? So Waited. And what do you know? The lady who talked to me about not leaving, she never leaves early. She always leaves after everybody. But for some reason, she was so chipper, and she left that Friday, and she left before me, and she waved goodbye and left. And I was like, okay, that was my answer. She is not normally that chipper one, and she does never leave early before me. I feel like this was just a weird energy. I didn't like it. So at 4:57, 58, I sent my 2-week notice, and I peaced out on that Friday. Come in Monday morning, and they had gotten it, and they're like, they were just dumbfounded. They had a couple meetings with like the couple other employees asking like, did they have any idea like what's going on? And I just, at that point, I completely relinquished it and left it, and I was on my way to my new space. And I helped them. I stayed my 2 weeks. I trained who I needed to train, and I left. It just made me really understand how much your goals aren't always going to align with others. And you may fit into a space for some time, but at some point it may not be for you, and that is okay. And it was through that ritual with Belial and the introduction of Hekate and everything that really led me to this space that I'm in now. And even now I'm going through some things where it's like, what's best for me? What do I want? And I was like, you know what? It's time to make this video. I watched so many videos on demonolatry on YouTube and stuff, and I was like, you know what? It's time to share my experience. I feel like I've processed most of it because it was a very impactful like couple years of my life. Like I even losing my best friend who I felt was a sister through that job, and then losing the part of my people pleasing self there too. It's made me more strategic, and I feel like that is a big indicator of Belial have touched my life and really helped me. So I wish to continue to work with him, and in a way I feel like this is in honor of him and for what he's done for me, and I hope to continue to work with that. And I want to make some more videos, and I really enjoy this. So if you like this video, please leave a like, subscribe if you'd like to see any more videos. I definitely want to do some more